In the Antarctic Ocean, there were 28 people on a ship called Endurance. However, their ship got stuck in thick ice that weighed millions of tons. They had been stuck in the same spot for 7 months, unable to move. One night, there was a loud noise from beneath the ship, and it tilted to one side. It felt like someone had given it a strong push from below. What happened next was beyond their wildest imagination. The year was 1914, and the Endurance was stuck in one of the most dangerous places on Earth, the Antarctic Ocean. The waves here could be as tall as buildings. The winds could blow at speeds of 100 kilometers per hour, and the water temperature was so low that it could freeze a human's blood. Traveling through this ocean was like embracing death. If the cold and waves didn't get you, the massive icebergs could easily crush your ship. 111 years ago, in 1914, a group of 28 people found themselves stuck in this terrifying ocean. They weren't stuck for just a few days or weeks, but for an incredible 2 years. There was no way to call for help, and all they could see around them was ice and snow, with no hope of rescue. This became one of the greatest survival stories of all time. The hero of this story was Sir Ernest Shackleton, an explorer who wanted to push human endurance to its limits. Shackleton had a bold mission: to cross Antarctica on foot. His ship, the Endurance, was named to reflect the spirit of surviving the toughest challenges. Shackleton had already attempted to reach Antarctica twice before, but failed both times. In 1901, he had gone as far as 750 kilometers, but had to turn back. Again, in 1907, he reached only 150 kilometers from his goal before turning around. But in 1914, he was determined to achieve what no one had ever done before. He called his mission the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition. Due to the extreme dangers involved, no one was eager to join him. Shackleton faced his first challenge: finding a crew for the expedition. So, he placed an advertisement in the Times, a major newspaper in Britain. The ad read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey," and it was not your typical job offer. It clearly stated that the pay would be low, the cold would be unbearable, there would be months of darkness, constant danger, and no guarantee of safe return. Shackleton wanted people who weren't afraid of extreme danger. Soon, he had gathered a team of 27 men, all of whom were willing to face unimaginable hardships. Shackleton had planned the expedition for 4 years, but as the start date approached, World War I broke out. Many thought the expedition would be canceled, but Britain, who was also at war, allowed Shackleton to proceed with his mission. The ship that Shackleton chose for his journey was no ordinary ship. It had to be extremely strong, capable of cutting through the thick ice. Fortunately, a ship designed for Arctic exploration was already available. It had been built by a Norwegian company for another explorer, but the business failed, and Shackleton bought the ship. He named it Endurance, and it was made from the toughest wood and designed to withstand the immense pressure of the ice. Finally, on August 8th, 1914, Endurance set sail from the port of Plymouth, England. For the next 4 months, they sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. They stopped in Argentina and then went to South Georgia Island to make final preparations. On December 5th, 1914, the ship turned toward the Antarctic Ocean. On board Endurance were 28 men and 50 dogs, which would help pull sledges carrying supplies across the Antarctic ice. The journey was supposed to take just one more day, but on January 18th, 1915, disaster struck. The ship encountered thick layers of ice in the Weddell Sea, which became so thick that it was impossible for Endurance to move forward. At some places, the ice was 18 feet thick, and there was no way to proceed on foot either. At first, it seemed like a temporary problem, but it soon became clear that Endurance was stuck for good. Shackleton and his crew tried for days to cut through the ice, manually pushing the ship forward, but barely moved. After several days of exhausting work, they managed to move the ship only 300 meters, and then Endurance got stuck again. After a month of trying to free the ship, Shackleton decided to abandon the effort. They decided to wait for the ice to break naturally as the seasons changed. During this time, they turned the ship into a winter station. The crew kept themselves busy by having discussions, playing soccer, giving each other haircuts, and cooking meals. They were just waiting for the ice to break so they could continue their journey. Days turned into months, and the crew grew closer, even forming emotional bonds with the dogs. Despite everything, they held on to the hope that one day they would be able to continue their journey. But nature had other plans. In April 1915, the ice started to break, but the pressure from the layers of ice caused them to press down on the ship, and Endurance started to suffer from the weight. The crew worked hard to remove some of the ice pressure, but it wasn't enough. On July 14, 1915, a loud noise came from beneath the ship, and Endurance tilted to one side. The rudder, which helped steer the ship, was completely destroyed. It became clear that the ship was beyond repair. They had been stuck for 7 months, and they were now 2,000 kilometers away from any form of civilization. Shackleton knew they had to act quickly. On October 18, 1915, after 9 months of being stuck, the ship was sinking due to the weight of the ice pressing down on it. Shackleton ordered that the crew abandon the ship. They moved their supplies, including food, lifeboats, and blankets, and set up camp on the ice. They were now stranded on an ice floe, with no shelter but the sky above them, and only the shipwreck to remind them of their failed mission. After the ship sank, Shackleton knew they had no choice but to make their way to land. They were 550 kilometers away from a remote island called Elephant Island, where they might find shelter and supplies. However, the journey ahead was going to be deadly. The ice floes they were on would drift, but the conditions were so harsh that it was unclear if they would survive. They were running low on food and supplies. By February 1916, they were living on just 1 biscuit a day. They even had to kill their dogs for food. After months of drifting, the ice floe changed direction and began to move toward a different island, Elephant Island, rather than their intended destination, South Georgia Island. It took days for them to reach the island, but the journey was filled with peril. Temperatures dropped to minus 20 degrees Celsius, and many of the crew developed frostbite. In April 1916, they finally reached Elephant Island, but the island was barren and lacked supplies. They needed to make their way to South Georgia Island, but it was 1,300 kilometers away. Shackleton decided to embark on a suicidal mission, to take a small lifeboat and make the journey across one of the most dangerous sea routes in the world. On April 24, 1916, Shackleton and 5 of his men set off in a small boat. They battled monstrous waves and freezing temperatures. With no compass or GPS, they navigated only by the stars and the sun. After 16 days of struggling, on May 10, 1916, they finally reached South Georgia Island. But they were on the wrong side of the island. They climbed over 4,000 feet of mountains for 36 hours to reach the whaling station. When they arrived, Shackleton was so weak that no one recognized him. But after 3 days of rest, he made his way back to Elephant Island to rescue the remaining men. After many failed attempts, Shackleton finally reached Elephant Island on August 30th, 1916. To his amazement, all of the men were still alive. Shackleton had succeeded in saving everyone. 2 years and 22 days after leaving England, Shackleton and his crew returned home safely. Although they never completed their original mission to cross Antarctica, Shackleton's greatest achievement was his leadership in keeping his crew alive in the most extreme conditions. It is, without a doubt, one of the greatest survival stories of all time.